As the founder of DeliverFund, I keep getting asked about my opinion in regards to the Epstein files. And while I usually avoid commenting on headlines, I'll make an exception in this case. The Epstein files are proving what I have been saying about child trafficking for over 10 years. The powerful elites do not care about this issue because many of them are in on it. Jeffrey Epstein is just one example of what it looks like when rot and corruption become completely normalized within circles of power. After Epstein's 2008 conviction as a sex offender, the people with security details and private jets and foundations named after themselves didn't cut him off. They kept taking his calls. They kept showing up at his townhouse parties and on his island. They kept asking him for introductions, political help, money, and even giving him PR advice on how to rebrand his reputation after his conviction. And look at some of the names that kept circling Epstein after his 2008 conviction. Bill Gates met with Epstein multiple times, well after Epstein was a registered sex offender. Steve Bannon treated Epstein as a behind-the-scenes strategist for his global populist project, even filming hours of video to shape Epstein's comeback narrative. And what about Richard Branson? He exchanged warm emails inviting Epstein back to his island and even told Epstein to make sure that next time he came, to bring his harem. Language that shows just how normalized Epstein's behavior had become in these circles of power. And let's not forget Alan Dershowitz, Epstein's longtime friend and lawyer who helped negotiate that sweetheart Florida plea deal he got in 2008. Who actually published an argument in the paper that statutory rape laws were a, quote, outdated concept. That's not a random assortment of acquaintances. That's Bill Gates as tech's old guard, Bannon as the nationalist rights chief strategist, and Branson as a billionaire brand that's built on good capitalism, and one of America's most famous lawyers, all of them finding uses for a convicted predator after he'd already shown the world exactly who he was. It tells you that in the upper strata, the real sin isn't preying on vulnerable girls, it's losing your utility to the network. As long as you still have access, introductions, intelligence, or money, people in power are willing to look past the mugshot. Now, let's set that next to the way our leaders in Washington are behaving today. Across multiple administrations, from both parties, the United States has managed to generate mountains of Epstein paperwork. We've held hearings very publicly and made speeches about trafficking, while basic funding for victim services, proactive investigations, and data-driven enforcement constantly either lags, stalls, or is flat out denied. The same system that can mobilize instantly for a bank bailout or a new weapons program somehow turns slow and confused when the mission becomes find the kids and lock up the people selling them. That isn't a lack of capacity, it's a lack of will. And this is the through line for the whole story. It's not just about one monster. It's about a culture in which billionaires and politicians and celebrity lawyers treat a known predator as a networking hub, in which legal elites argue that sex with post-puberty teenagers might not need criminal penalties, in which Congress can talk endlessly about protecting children and still leave the actual fight, underfunded and reactive. The files didn't just expose a man. They exposed a hierarchy that will tolerate almost anything, as long as it happens in the right circles of money and power. But you know who isn't in the Epstein emails? You aren't. Your friends aren't, and I'm not. I get asked all the time by people who support DeliverFund, why isn't the government funding this work? Why aren't billionaires like Bill Gates or Richard Branson cutting some big checks? Well, maybe the answer is uncomfortably simple, because the kind of work we do would force them to look straight into the ecosystem they helped build. That's why the normal, everyday donor like you is so important. The deeper you read into the files, the clearer it becomes why the most powerful people on earth do not take child trafficking seriously. Too many of them were in the same rooms and on the same planes, and despite full knowledge they were cavorting with a child trafficker, they chose to continue as normal. The lesson here isn't just that Epstein was a monster. He clearly was. The lesson is that many of his companions are still protected by a system that worships money and access and refuses to let the inconvenience of a child predator get in the way of their parties, their deals, and their power structure.